So good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming to the last talk of the day. I know you'd all rather be in the pub, which is exactly where I'm going to be after this. Losing battles, winning wars. First thing, who am I? Phil Lynch. I'm one of the managing principals at Netitude. And for my sins, that means that I'm one of 4 managers responsible for the entire pen test team there. I also manage most of Netitude's red team engagements from a risk, governance and client sort of facing perspective. And on occasion, I still get my hands dirty behind the keyboard. So I'm not too far removed from the cold face that I don't really know what's going on. I have the dubious honour of also conducting most of the executive debriefs that we do after an engagement. Basically, that means going into the senior management, executive teams, C-levels, and telling them how miraculously well they've performed over their engagement, or not. I never give good news, unfortunately, but that's it. I'm ex-Royal Air Force, 24 years in the Air Force. I've got 25 years experience in IT, the last 6 of which have been primarily in security. And I'm also co-author of Netitude's Advanced Threat Actor Simulation course, which I also teach with some of the other guys from Netitude. So what's this all about? So Netitude have been red teaming for the past sort of 5 years, effectively. So over that time, we've learned quite a few things along the way. And I apologise now, I will try very hard not to swear, so apologies for anybody with sensibilities. I am Scottish and it's a bit of a cultural thing. But most of the things we've learned because things go south, things go wrong. We cock up, we are human. By the time you've got into the middle of an engagement, the heat of battle, you tend to make mistakes. Now that's fine in and of itself, it's not maybe great for the engagement, but primarily as long as what we're doing is learning from those mistakes, we're not falling into Einstein's definition of insanity, which is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So what I wanted to do with you lot today was share some of our experiences where things have been less than ideal and they've gone wrong, so that hopefully you'll be on an engagement, you'll be managing teams on engagements, whatever your role is, and maybe you don't make the same mistakes. So maybe your engagements are a little bit more successful than the ones who've not been so great. And of course, it's a B-Sides talk, so there's an appropriate number of memes and GIFs in there because that's what we do. Learning from our mistakes. Yeah, we all make them. And when you're on an engagement, users do weird stuff. You can never account for everything that's going to come up when you're on a red team engagement. You're blind from the start, effectively. You're on the outside. You've got maybe access to the internal environment. You don't know what it looks like. You don't know what they're doing. You can't see anything. You've got no real idea of what's happening on the other side of the house. You can make some assumptions. You can make some educated guesses, but you never truly know what's going on. And because of that, things happen. When they don't go the way you wanted them to go, the way you expected them to go, or quite frankly, things happen and you've got no idea why, what do we do about it? Learning from those mistakes is fundamental to us becoming better at what we do. And that's not just red teaming, that's the industry in general. So at Netitude, we're very open about any things that go wrong. We have a no-blame culture. If somebody does something that they think is a mistake, they think it's gone wrong, we open it out, we let the team know, we make sure everybody understands why it's happened, how it's happened. And quite often we don't find out until right at the end of the engagement when we're doing the debriefs and we're getting the client's input as to what's actually gone on. And sometimes it's been things that we haven't even thought of that have that's sort of caught us out. So, what we've learned. I'll start with the famous one, threat intel. Everybody has their views on threat intelligence. Snake oil, smoke and mirrors, little bit of magic. Threat intelligence-led pen testing requires threat intelligence. And you've got to help your threat intel teams provide you, as the red team, what you need. So obviously there's 2 sides to it. They provide the client with their pretty report that shows their exposure, what they look like to other people in the real world, what their digital footprint's like. And then there's a targeting side that we as red teamers want to consume in order to compromise the organisation, show them how this can happen through intelligence gathering exercises, and then effectively sort of teach them how this is bad and how not to do it in the future. So, I think the most important thing I've learned over the years about threat intelligence is that timing is crucial. Take the following scenarios. We, Netitude, started an engagement, I think, 1 week ago. Threat intelligence was probably done in 2017 at the back end. It should have started in March of this year, the engagement, the actual operational side. So if you think about it, that threat intelligence at the time was relevant, it was good, it was exactly what we needed. 6 months down the line, is it relevant? Is it still useful to us as a red team? So when we're looking at the targeting aspects of it, we're thinking, okay, the threat intel team have discovered a conference and they attend this, the target company attends this conference regularly. We're going to use that to create a pretext around inviting some of their speakers or people who've spoken at these events back to our event. Except now, that event it happened 3 months ago. That threat intel's no good to us anymore. So, getting threat intelligence to you at the right time is crucial. So you need to be aware of delays. You need to be aware of any pretexts that are proposed to you through threat intelligence that may not be relevant. Again, if they're talking about things around Christmas, if it's April and it's Easter, Santa Claus isn't coming along, it's the Easter Bunny you want to be talking about. So you have to look at these things as red team. You have to go in and make sure that it's relevant for what you're trying to do. You can be creative. You can use some clever language within your threat intel, your targeting packs, in order for it to become relevant at the time. But it becomes difficult. Other things that happen over time. Your targets leave the organisation. They get married and hence their name changes. They move departments and you're targeting HR and they're now in marketing or sales. All of these things can happen, and from the outside, you can only go on the information you've got presented in front of you. So what do we do about this? Well, you clearly can't continually go through the threat intel loop where you've got your team constantly gathering the latest and greatest, because it's just not practical. They've moved on to the next engagement, they're prepping it for the next test. So what do? What I've learned, talk to the clients. Talk to them up front. Ask them about the people that you're proposing to target. It sounds a little bit alien to a lot of people who do red teaming because they're like, oh, you can't tell the client anything because they'll game you, they'll use it against you, they'll watch those accounts. At some point, you have to trust the white cell, and by white cell, for those who don't really understand, those are the trusted individuals within a target organisation that know the tests happening, they know that you're going to be targeting individuals within there, and they may have a view on some of the pretext that you want to use. Speak to them, get their input, make sure that if you're targeting Joe Bloggs in HR, that Joe Bloggs, he still indeed works in HR. And maybe he's not on holiday for the next 2 weeks. Because again, there's nothing worse than having put a lovely pretext together, great phishing email, send it in, and you get an out-of-office reply. Hi, I'm in the Gannick areas and I'll be back in November, check my tan out. And you've got a 2-week engagement and it's September. It's like, what's next? And these things happen. You've just got to manage them, but talk to the clients. It's an age-old sort of thing where, oh, you can't tell the client anything. There's a white cell there for a reason. Use them, talk to them, get that little bit of intelligence that helps the test run. Because remember, they can pay a whole load of money for you to sit and say, well, I've targeted all these individuals and nobody's replying because none of them work there anymore. They're all on holiday or whatever. And all they're doing is money is dripping down the drain, and you're sending emails to empty inboxes or inboxes that haven't been monitored, and they're receiving no value on the end of it. So, all of these things have happened to us, and because of that, I now, at the beginning of an engagement, I set up dialogue with clients, and I make sure they understand that when they receive the threat intel report, that we have a discussion around those people we're proposing to target. And they can then go, generally without any sort of alarm bells going off, and say, oh, actually, Sheila in HR, she's on maternity leave. She's not going to be in the office for the next 4 months. well, let's not target Sheila and HR anymore because that's not going to provide you any value and it saves us a whole load of work up front. So it's not rocket science, but you'll be amazed at how many people won't engage with the client early on. Don't wait for it to go wrong, try and preempt it. The second thing that I'd learned, and being an ex-military guy, I've sort of travelled quite extensively around the world, and I reckon my geography seems to be pretty good. Pen testers are geographically challenged. I don't know what it is. They don't really seem to understand where countries are. It's not just news outlets that seem to struggle with it. I don't know what it is. Pen testers struggle. So here's the scenario. We're conducting a red team for an organisation that has presence globally. It's got offices in loads of different countries, and they want to test each of these countries individually, so that they're all marked from the same hymn sheet, if you like. And that's great. So threat intelligence kicks in. It's in a timely manner. We've engaged with the client. Are these targets valid? Yeah. So-and-so works in that office. Brilliant. We create a nice pretext. We send an email. We've successfully fished the individual at the end, and we get a shell back. Everybody's doing the root dance in the war room. So, because we are conscientious red teamers, we start doing situational awareness. We do some basic checks. We've got a shell, which means the IP address that the external facing infrastructure has is on our whitelist. That means it belongs to them. Tick number 1. The target name is correct. So that's good. We know that we've targeted the right individual. We can see his email address. We look at the computer name. The computer name follows the standard that we expect for the environment. The domain name is correct. I mean, everything's good. We're in the right place. We can start going to town, right? We'll do one last check. We'll just check the last time the system rebooted and stuff like that. No, that's interesting. The time's all off. Not just because it's in a foreign country. It's off from what we expect it to be. Oh, it's system time. It can't be wrong. Maybe the computer's not very well. Let's have a look. No, it's 4 hours out. How else can we check the time? Let's have a look at the locale settings. Oh dear. That's not the country we were expecting from our target. So what do we do then? We speak to the client. We believe that our target is in country X and we expected them to be in country Y. Can you confirm? Everything else is good apart from where they physically are. The client runs off and says, no. Subsequently, what we find out is this individual works between 2 different countries, and we happen to catch him when he's not in the target market. No need to massively panic. We haven't committed an offence. The target's valid. He's the right organisation. He's just not in the market that we were looking to target at that particular time, not in the right place. So, despite us going through a whole raft of checks that all red teams should be doing, we still got caught out by what fundamentally was an understanding between threat intelligence, the target, the client and us, that individual worked in multiple locales. So it's something to be aware of. Situational awareness. What helped us here is the fact that we went to town and when things didn't look quite right, we made a call, and if it didn't look right, we stopped the engagement, we came out, we chatted to the client. The last thing you want is to actually have targeted an individual who's in the wrong organisation. Therefore, you are in deep doo-doo at that point. And you don't want to be there. So, globally, the world's a big place. It's easy to get things wrong. Countries are a long way off. Not just a global problem. It would appear that pen testers' local geography is not entirely great either. Consider the following scenario. We've been asked to conduct a physical SE engagement against a company. So we asked them, okay, what's the objectives? And they said, well, we've got a client database, but we want to see if you can breach our physical perimeter, get into the office, and then hopefully compromise the network, or hopefully not compromise the network, and get to our client database. Is this something you can do for us? Yeah, of course we can. We'll get this done. So we assign it to one of our consultants who absolutely loves to do a bit of physical SE. He speaks to the client. He said, can I have the postcode of the building? And the client duly gives him. He said, it's in a business park. It's a multi-tenanted building. He said, and the business part's all covered by the same postcode. I was like, okay. He said, but the name's above the door. And remember that for later, because that's important. The name's above the door. So our consultant goes and does a bit of recon. He checks the company website, gets the address off of it. He puts it into Google Maps. It shows up. It's exactly where the client said it was going to be. He's thinking, yeah, this is all good. So he takes a drive by. He has a look around. Yeah, client said, multi-tenanted office space opposite some industrial units. So he does drive past, multi-tenanted. Looks good. Industrial units. I'll pull into the car park. Company name above the door. Winner, I'm in. So off he trots, gets himself ready. Next day, he sashays into the building using his best physical SE techniques, which was basically he made a badge and then went and walked in through the front door. It was a bit quiet in the office. There was only one or two people milling about, and he was, okay. Settled himself down in the corner, plugged his laptop in, went to town. Compromised their entire network, 0 to hero, in about 4 hours using a printer. He's a good consultant. Did a great job. Anyhow, he's getting towards the end of the day, and he's thinking, it's been real quiet here. And one of the staff comes up to him and said, look, mate, he said, I'm after an early knock-off. You couldn't lock up for me. Panic. No, maybe I can't lock up for you. I'm just leaving. So as he's leaving, he gets a phone call from the client. Said, was there a reason you weren't sort of doing anything today? And he's like, what? He said, well, I happened to be in the office. He said, and I haven't seen you. Awkward silence. I've been in the office all day. There's a problem. Sometimes things really don't go to plan. Turns out the company has 2 offices in a business park in multi-tenanted buildings opposite industrial units. And hilariously so, they're 1 road apart and are still covered by the same postcode. You can't account for some of this stuff happening, and like I said, sometimes things just don't go to plan. Fortunately, again, when he got into the office, the correct name was in the building, he was on the right network, he'd done his due diligence, he'd done all his checks, he was definitely right place, and he had compromised the right network. It was just from one of their small satellite offices that wasn't really in use. But I think it gave a lot of value to the client, because the client had a lot of focus in this other office, and now he realised he could be completely compromised from a place that he wasn't investing any security in. So everybody's a winner, except for the person that was going to give him the keys. Not great. Oh. Yeah, so geography, not the pen tester's friend. OPSEC, right. This will be a painful slide for me personally, our team, and hopefully because of that it won't be painful for some of you guys. OPSEC is hard. Things never go quite according to plan. So we go to great lengths to make sure our OPSEC's as good as it possibly can be within our red team. We go to excruciating lengths. And yet, over the last 5 years, there have been a number of occasions where when I look at them in the cold, hard light of the slide in front of me, I think, why did we do some of this stuff? And the bottom line is when you're in an engagement, when time pressure is on, when you are suddenly getting somewhere after many days of getting nowhere, the red mist comes down, pen testers be pen testers, and they just get on the keyboard and give it everything. Because they want to do a good job, they want to get to the objective, they want to provide value to the client. And OPSEC is really hard. So let's start with the beginning, emailing. We don't use things like Kingfisher and Netitude. We don't do mass mail campaigns. We have a separate offering that does that. When we're doing targeted attacks, In an engagement, we may, at the top end, send something like 6 emails. We don't send dozens of emails and throw all the poo at the wall and see what sticks. We're very targeted in what we do. So we go to great pains to make sure that not only is the infrastructure that supports the pretext up and running looks legit, we hope that our emails also look legit. And again, when you do this globally, we have interpreters who come in and they do the translation services for us, and we have them do it in a way where it says, don't just do word for word what this email says. I want it to sound exciting. And our translators, they go to work and they make these things look really beautiful and they do a great job. That's fine up to the point where one user, very vigilant as they may be, said, I didn't really expect this kind of email. I'll send it to our IT security and they can just check it out. And they do a quick bit of reversing on the email. They have a look at the X headers. And lo and behold, the X originating IP is pointing straight back to a Netitude IP address. Because when the guys were testing, they were testing it from Netitude infrastructure rather than doing it from a VPS out in the wide world somewhere. Sounds really Billy Basic. But when you've tested the same email 40 or 50 times to make sure it's absolutely perfect, the one time you're not connected to the VPS when you're testing it is invariably the one that you say, yeah, this is good to go, and you get nailed for it. It's hard. Document metadata. If you're sending documents in, whether it's supporting documents to back up your pretext, then make sure you strip the metadata from it. If you've created it using a VM that's owned by the corporate or it's your own person, again, you're thinking, what idiot does that? We've done it. You know, it's over 5 years. There's a lot of things can happen. So, again, we're telling you, hopefully you remember, strip the metadata. It might only happen the once, but it's always the one time that you use it that you don't do it. Social media. Well, we're using social media, not for social media purposes, but for targeting, because that's what we like to do. Don't use corporate or personal accounts. Think of LinkedIn and the who's viewing my profile. If they see a load of hairy-bummed pen testers looking at the profile and suddenly they've got an email offering them the job with the world on a stick associated with it, it's probably not good. So use your burner account. Use those things that aren't going to fingerprint your organisation or your team when you're doing your sort of reconnaissance on your targets. Again, sounds obvious. I'll just check. I need another target. I'm really struggling. They've all gone on holiday. I've got nobody left from TI to target. Let me have a look at LinkedIn, and you forget to use your non-corporate account. The individual's not here. RDP. You're in the environment. You've got the ability to RDP to other servers. It's a great thing to have if you've got that level of compromise. Now, when you're cleaning up and it's the middle of the night and it's on a weekend and you think, oh, that box that hasn't been in is online, I'll go and do my cleanup because I'm a good pen tester and I want to make sure everything's clean. And it's the middle of the night and obviously there's nobody there. When you do RDP and it said, this will terminate another user's session, do you want to carry on? The answer is always no. Because when it's yes, they're like, somebody's just kicked me off my computer. Police, something's happening. Real story. He's never lived it down. Basically because I won't let him forget it. That's the bottom line. Using your certificates, again, they're free now. When you've got multiple VPSs and they're obviously all secured, make sure you're not doing things like leaving other infrastructure names in the alt names headers. It's really, trust me, it's easy to do. And it's happened. And when the blue team are on you, stuff like that is not fun in the debriefs. It does not look good. But it happens. So be careful when this stuff is going on. VPNs. We love them. You've compromised the network. You've got credentials. You discover they've got single-factor SSL VPN open to the world. It's game over. You're going to bypass all of their boundary controls. You get your VM set up, you VPN in, brilliant. I'm now a machine on their network. I can do whatever I want. Leet Hacksaw Box as a computer name and Fuzzy Navel as your work group sticks out like the proverbial on a client network. Remember to change the things that are obvious. It happens. Again, it sounds really obvious when I'm saying it, and it is kind of obvious in the cold light of day. But as soon as you get that VPN access, you've got 2 hours left before the end of the engagement. You're going to use it, right? Dead easy to forget something like that. Be aware. DNS. So, basically when you've got multiple engagements running, you're using lots of different DNS. Don't share them between engagements. Now, again, that sounds obvious. You should never reuse your collateral. If you've got a lot of collateral in the bank because you're storing it up, you're getting reputation, you're doing all these good things, it's really easy to lose track. Tracking things like all the domains, all the IP estate, all the websites that you've got up and running for your engagements going forward. If people aren't marking down what they're using, when they're using, how they're using it, is it burned? And it is quite an overhead, and it's a struggle for all teams that I've ever spoken to, is how they track the collateral. It will get you caught in the end, because as soon as you get put onto a blacklist by company X, company Y's got the same feed, and suddenly you're burned before you've started. So tracking your collateral through DNS is something that it's hard, but you've got to sort of be aware of it. On domain reputation, so again, we do things like we always buy domain privacy, and everybody says, "Oh, you don't need to bother with that. GDPR fixes all that, takes all that information out." It's not global, yeah. If you've ever got the option to buy it, buy it. If you don't get the option, use a different provider. Those historical who-is records against the registrant is going to get you caught. Again, maybe not in the outset, maybe not in the early days, but as soon as the blue team have got a sniff, they're going to use all their tools and they're going to fingerprint you, at which point it's kind of game over for you. Domain privacy. So you've got domain reputation with your particular piece of infrastructure you're using. You're checking it against the type of proxy you're using, say Bluecoat, for example. Don't just check it against what you think you're going against. Check it against all of the providers. That way, it might look good on one provider, it might not look good on another, and eventually they'll synchronize, and that'll get you caught. So, do your due diligence. It only takes a few minutes more to check it against all your providers rather than just the one. It looks good on that, we're good to go. You need to check it everywhere. We spoke a little bit about tracking your collateral. It's really, really hard to keep all of this stuff. And, if you've got 4 or 5 engagements running simultaneously, who's using this website, who's using that, who's using those email addresses? You're building this collateral up, you've got to have a reliable way of tracking it. All your DNS names, all your IP addresses, all of that stuff. Because again, the blue teams are on it. It's hard for you, but once they've fingerprinted you, once they've got that little thread that they can start tugging at, it's much easier for them to be able to track all that back. When you're using things like AWS, elastic IPs, buy them. The last thing you need is, because you have to do a reboot of the server for whatever reason, is you end up getting a different IP address. All of your C2 is coming back to an IP address that you no longer have. And even worse, somebody else now has. That's not a great place to be. And you're running around like a lunatic trying to change all your DNS and stuff. It's only for what these engagements cost to run and stuff. It's not a lot of money to get elastic IPs. So use them where you can. And here's my favourite. It is my personal humble opinion that you cannot conduct proper red teams without dropping files to disk. There's a lot of people who will tell you that it's possible. We've been doing this a long time. You can't do it reliably. It's just not a thing. But I'm not saying that you go and you spray X's all over the target environment. That's not what I'm saying. Be careful about files that you drop, and absolutely record everything you drop in a target environment. Time date stamp it, location, and don't just do IPs, do host names, because IPs can change in target environments, but host names generally stay the same. Yeah? make sure that any artifacts that you either leave or you change in the target environment is absolutely picked up by you as the team, recorded and available immediately, that the client said, oh, we think we've got a real breach. I need to know everything you've done, where you've been, what you've been doing, because we need to remove attribution, because we've got an incident response team at 10 grand an hour, who might spend 2 weeks chasing you around the network. That's not good. And if you can provide that reliably in a short space of time, you will get mega brownie points with your clients. They'll love you for it. Not recorded it and not being able to provide it, it's just not an option. If you're doing red team engagements and you can't provide all of those things really quickly to your clients, you're doing them a disservice. Several times in the last couple of years, we've been on target and we've either discovered what looks like a breach in progress or a recent breach, or they've had an incident happen while we've been on their environment. And we have got better. We've not been great at the start, but we've really sort of refined our process. We can now provide them with everything we've done in really minutes after they tell us. We can provide all that information to them. And it's important that you're doing that for all of your clients. And at the end, they need it anyway, because if something happens down the line and you haven't been able to clean up because a machine's gone offline, the user's gone to Barbados for a month's holiday and taken the laptop with them, you can't clean it up from there. So you need to wait till it comes back to the environment. You've finished the engagement, but the client has the information they need in order to clean up manually. It's really important, and it'll do you wonders. And dropping files to disk, have the ability to time stop. If your tooling doesn't allow it, create that capability. Blue teams love this. When every file's got the system created date stamp on it, they can't just track you back to whatever was dropped in the last 2 days. They have to do a proper investigation. And remember, you're there to test the blue team's capabilities, their incident response. So you want to know how well they can do it. If all they have to do is a quick search on last access time or last created time, then, you're not stretching them. You're not giving them a proper test. So, what we found outside of the OPSEC and the mistakes that have been made is we've got to the stage on a target environment where we've found the target system. We know who the users of the target system are. We've compromised the machine the user owns. We're camped on his shoulder and we're like, come on then, log into that bad boy and we can all go home, time for tea and medals. And you spend a week watching them playing bubbles and looking at really expensive houses on the internet with the tab sat up in the corner, just waiting for them to click on it, and it doesn't happen. So we need the right tools for the job. Pen testers, you've got to love them. So tool development, because we've run into situations where if we had a bit of capability, we could have saved ourselves lots of pain, lots of heartache, lots of grief. Out of that, when there hasn't been capability, our guys they've been amazing. They go back and they're like, we can't currently do this, so let's figure out how we can do it, and we're going to write a tool to do it for us. And that's what you want. This goes back to the early days, and I'm sure you'll all be aware. One of the first things that we run into that there wasn't really any tooling available for was a proxy-aware C2. Back in the day, things like Empire and stuff, they couldn't handle proxy-aware environments. And while our clients are slowly catching up on the security ramp, most of them had an authenticated proxy, and we see it all the time. So, young Mr. Turner, and several other people, Mr. Hardy as well, developed Posh C2. Many of you will be familiar with it. It's an ongoing project. Young Mr. Rob Bone, who's sat up there. Say hello, everybody, Rob. There you go. Rob does a lot of dev on Posh C2 now, and it's gone from what was effectively a tool that allowed the guys to get through proxy-aware, to create proxy-aware payloads and get through authenticated proxies, to something that's now a fully fledged C2 framework where, you can write all your own modules, add to it, customize it, do what you will with it. But that was the original requirement. That's why they wrote it. And they wanted to learn PowerShell because back then PowerShell wasn't dead. it was still a thing. And Posh C2 was born out of that. So one of the other things that we discovered, again, you're on target and you've got this C2 channel, you've got interactive PowerShell or whatever it is. There's still some things that you can't do. Some of our target applications, you needed to have GUI access. It's either a thick client or it's sat behind a web front end or it's some antiquated AS400 type system that's got some weird interface that only runs on the desktop of the client. And unless you can get your grubby little fingers on it, you can't do a lot. And that's really frustrating when you've gone to all the time and effort of camping on the user's box. You can see them using it and you can't do anything with it. So, excuse me. We wrote our own SOX proxy. So obviously it's not new. Up until the point where we wrote this, the only thing we kind of had available was the SOX proxy from Metasploit. Now, it was a good SOX proxy, but everybody knew how to fingerprint it. So throwing it into an engagement where, again, you spent a lot of time, effort, and, money getting to the end point, and then throwing in, a bit of Metasploit code, probably not great. So one of our guys, Rob Maslin, and with help from other people in the team, he wrote Sharp SOX. Oh, buttons. As you can see, you've got the attacker's machine there, and this is all we do. It allows us to proxy our traffic over our C2 comms to the infected machine at the other side, and then we've got GUI access. So we can run stuff from our side. If they're using a thick client, we can download the thick client from their machine. We can run it on our machine and we can proxy it down. We can run, like you can on any sort of proxy. You can run proxy chains or proxy cap. You can use a browser. You can use any number of tools on the endpoint. And all it does is it just tunnels everything down our existing C2, and you've got effective GUI access. It sounds really Billy Basics. It was actually much, much harder than we ever thought, is to be able to run the SOX proxy across our C2 comms. And it not to be visible to the other side. And that's the beauty of it. It's been recently updated. Anybody who keeps up with Posh development, Posh v3, Sharp SOX is built in, and it's super reliable, it's super fast. And it's made a massive difference. Using a browser now to get to the target application and the back end, it's a breeze, and it's really made a difference. The other thing that we often happen, like I said, a couple of the guys spent best part of a week camped on a user's machine, the user of the target application, and all he did was look for expensive houses and play bubbles. He was an investment banker, and he did no work whatsoever. And I dread to think what they were paying him, but looking at the houses he was looking at, it was lots of money. And he wasn't even that good at bubbles. We could see his desktop. We were camped there. We were watching his screen the entire time. And we could see the tab with the target application name in it. All he needed to do was click on that tab, and we'd keylog him, and we'd then SOX proxy in, and we would begin. A week, he never went near that tab. He never touched what effectively his job was. I don't know how you get away with it. So, again, Mr. Maslin, he wrote a tool called Power Thief. I'll apologise for the next GIF that's coming up, because this is Rob Maslin's work, and anybody who's worked with him, the guy's a genius, but his ability to actually use computers for things like Word, PowerPoint and stuff, shocking. The guy struggles with phones, and yet he's got massive noggin, really clever. But I'll let it run through a couple of times, and I will explain what it's kind of doing. Right. It just needs to get itself back to the beginning. It's not a video, it's just a GIF. Right, so the first thing you're going to see a browser with multiple tabs. That's the one that you're after. If the user doesn't click on it, you're going to struggle to get there. There's a particular API he's interested in. He's going to run Power Thief on the implant that's sat in that box. It has a whole load of functionality. You can see the 3 tabs there that are open. He could pick any one of them, choose the ID, dump the HTML out, find the particular API or whatever ID field that he wanted. As you can see there, the ID was API secret. And you can dump that into the command line and it will pull that out. And it doesn't matter what tab they're viewing at the time. It can interact with the browser and pull HTML back from any of the tabs that are open. And there's a whole raft of us. So think, in this case, think of somebody who's using a password manager. Password managers don't work for us for keylogin because obviously it's being copy and pasted out. But if you can pull it back straight from the browser when it's being entered, you're in. The links at the end of the presentation, you'll be able to sort of go. Rob did a talk on this a year ago, I think. There's a blog. The tool is available as a standalone as well as it being available for C2 frameworks. And it allows you to do a whole raft of other stuff. It allows you to execute JavaScript in the window of your choice and stuff like that. But outside of this talk, a tool that allowed us to be able to move forward with our engagements without relying on that user. So that lazy so-and-so investment banker, we could have done this the first day that we were on his machine while he played bubbles. The next thing we come up against is, again, over the years, our clients, the clients that we're coming up against, are getting better. Their security is getting better. Some of them are actually starting to do network segregation of all things. How bizarre is that? We had a situation where one of our guys was in an environment and you could not get from server land back to user land. He could do the usual things. He could request SMB, so think your file shares. He could do HTTP to HTTPS, so think of your web servers that are sat in server land. But what he couldn't do was get a shell on them because it couldn't come back. And it wasn't allowed out to the internet. This is a bit annoying because quite often a lot of the good stuff lives in server land, and that's where we want to get to. So think back to your old Metasploit days when you can't get a rev shell working because of firewalling issues. Bind shell. So bind shell's still not going to work in this case because we do want that C2 traffic. So, excuse me. So what Mr. McLeod wrote was a tool called Pbind. What this allowed him to do was use SMB named pipes, not rocket science, but because 445 into the target or the server LAN was allowed because of the file shares that were there, he was able to connect using named pipes and then run commands from that server, from that named pipe, to other servers in the environment. So then he could do things like run an ARP scan. What other devices are in here? He could do things like try and find what ports were open back into user land and where they were. So what he's able to do, and I'll show you here, he can get in, he can't get out, so he can't get shell. So Pbind allows him to create that named pipe onto the first server, run commands against the second server, find the route back out through the firewall back to user land, and now he's in user land and he can get information back by running the commands in a push rather than a pull manner. And again, this has become really sort of useful to us in those environments that they're doing what we're telling them. We're telling them to segregate the networks. We're telling them not to use server land, user land, and it just be a big flat network when the segregation comes in. So it shows you that we're still able to do a lot of this. So the last few slides, just a little bit on communication. So it is good to talk, right? It's good to talk too much. Effective communications on any red team engagement. You've got to have constant dialogue, not just amongst the team members, but amongst the client and yourself. Early stages of an engagement, how we at Netitude run it, we get all of the guys who are on the engagement together in the same room, same place, because those early times are really crucial. It's when it's at its most stressful, you've got your fish going in, you might have your first shell coming back, you want to get persistent, you want to secure your foothold in the environment. There's a lot of moving parts, and trying to do this from different countries, different counties, different sort of cities, it can be quite difficult. However, we don't want everybody camped in at Netitude's offices all the time. So those early stages are critical. Client communication needs to be sort of clearly defined so that you can communicate with them. There's no point in sending them requests across email when, if they've got a mature blue team, they will be looking at the comms. And if they start to see red team as a word and they're flagging on it, or, exploit or anything else they might be looking for, you've got to make sure that you can communicate with the client in a secure manner that's not going to tip anybody off if they've got that level of capability. So how do we do this? So internally, we use a couple of tools. We use this, it's called Mattermost. It doesn't matter what the tool is as such. What this provides us with is the ability to have just standard chat room type facilities, person to person, so private channels, public channels that everybody can use, peer to peer, and it allows me, as a manager of the red team engagements, to be able to dip into all the live engagements that are running. But we can also secure them so that only the people that are supposed to be on the engagement can see what's happening. And that's great. And we host all of this internal, so we're not putting client information up on the cloud anywhere. And what it means is that once we've got over those initial stressful parts of the engagement and the guys can all sort of work from home, they've got a channel where they can share files, code blocks. They can do all of this stuff really sort of straightforward. And again, we've been using it about a year now, and it's really made a difference to us. And certainly as a manager, it allows me to keep a really close eye on wherever the guys are at. Effective knowledge sharing. So you're running the engagement, you're talking to everybody, it's all good. What about getting towards the end? Think of a large multi-scenario red team. You might have had 6 testers doing it. They've all got their data from the test. They're all feeding it back to the one poor soul who is having to write the report. And you give him your folder full of screenshots labelled 1 PNG, 2 PNG, 3 PNG. And that's not going to help him when he's got like a 200, 300 page report to write and he's having to go through all this stuff. So how do we make that happen in a way that's conducive to writing good reports? Because ultimately this is what you're giving your clients at the end, is good reports. We use a tool that allows us to collaboratively work on the same document at the same time. So it doesn't matter how many people are involved. They're logged in. Everybody who makes changes, it's all recorded. It's called HackMD. And because it's probably the most important part, it also is allowed to log everything. As I was saying earlier, being able to give your clients information really quickly is super important. It allows for the attribution. It's key during the detect and response, because after all, that's what we're there to do. And of course, with the multiple scenarios, it keeps all the information that everybody can work in at the same time. And that is literally the one thing I think we've probably done in the last 8 months is introduce this tool. We create a framework, and basically as the engagement's running, the guys are filling in this template effectively, collaboratively. Everybody's adding bits at the same time, and at the end of it, it's almost a copy and paste into your formal report template. All we need to add is the narrative, our story of how it happened. And the tool, like I said, it's done in Markdown. It's really straightforward. Again, we host this internally. The guys are all access it from the VPN. Again, it doesn't matter what the tool is. We know that this works for us. But if you're not using something where you can all write to the same document at the same time, rather than one person writes something, then he has to read it and then add his bit and so on and so forth. This becomes really useful. And you can do all sorts of funky things. You can create tables and stuff. And it just makes your reporting and therefore the recording of the engagement a much, much better sort of experience for the testers, really. And, they're all precious little flowers and they need a cuddle every now and again. And something like this helps them. So, yeah. Like I said, HackMD, I've got some links just at the end. So I'm just wrapping up now. Read the docs is something that we also use. Again, we use that for all our permanent storage of information. So, stuff that we're going to reuse over and over. That could be security products, what works against them, what doesn't. We have a repository. We use Read the Docs. It's a nice, easy format. Again, we all host this internally, so it's never out anywhere that people can get at it, but it's always available to the testers. couple of shout outs, and for those of you who like to take pictures and screenshots, those are the tools and the people involved, along with their sort of Twitter handles. All very smart people, way smarter than me, and they've really made a difference to our red teaming. Oh, sorry. Do you want me to go back? And those, just a couple of links there to to those tools that we use for our collaborative reporting at the end. And just last thing from me is thanks for listening to all our cock-ups.
We've got time for one or two questions with short answers.
Or hit me up in the after party in the bar. Come and talk to us. We don't bite. Well, apart from the short one in the middle up there, but fix your ankles will be fine.
Any quick questions? No, that was great, Phil. Thanks very much.